Pregnancy is just a bit of a belly bump, right? You're always making a big deal out of everything. You're a housewife. You should work more. We're out of beer. Go buy 3 boxes. 1 week before the due date, that's what my husband, who hasn't been supportive since the early stages of my pregnancy and has zero awareness as a father, said to me. There's no need for him to be the father of this child anymore. I am a housewife living in LA. I've been married to my husband for 2 years and am currently pregnant. I became a housewife at my husband's strong request after marriage. But I wanted to continue working, so I felt frustrated initially. Do I have to be a housewife? All my friends are working couples. Can't we just share household chores? I work for a major corporation, so people are watching. If people think I'm making my wife work despite earning a high salary, it could affect my promotion. According to my husband, it's unacceptable for his wife to work because of societal expectations. But nowadays, dual-income families are the norm. I can't see how my work would affect his promotion. I couldn't help but think he was worrying too much, but he wasn't receptive at all. Still, I decided to press the issue one last time. But I want to keep working. It should be fine if we don't tell anyone at your company, right? Wouldn't it be embarrassing to introduce you to my family? Well, as long as you do the housework as a housewife, it's fine. Protecting the family is a man's job. Leave it to me. Although I was a bit dissatisfied with his old-fashioned views, I perfectly managed the household chores as a housewife. My husband seemed proud of me and often boasted about me to his colleagues. She's a good wife. She even made some delicious snacks today. You're newlyweds and so in love. You've got such a wonderful wife, work hard to make her happy. Not just the boss, but also his juniors and peers often came over for drinks. So I had many sleepless nights, but as a wife, I supported my husband. Then one day, my pregnancy was discovered. I had always wanted a child, so I cried with joy. It's our long-awaited child. I'm so happy. We're going to be a family of 3, exciting, isn't it? My husband was as delighted as a child. And we spent our days looking forward to the new life about to join us. For a while, I did the household chores as usual, but after a month, morning sickness started. It was my first pregnancy, and I never imagined morning sickness could be this severe. Fortunately, my husband had a day off. Despite his tiredness, I was feeling unwell, so I decided to rely on him that day. Sorry. The morning sickness is making me feel heavy and lethargic. Could you please help with the basic chores today? Simple food is fine for dinner. What? You're joking, right? What? Are you serious? You're trying to push the housework onto me? No, it's not like that. But today, the morning sickness is terrible. That's just an excuse. Morning sickness isn't a reason to skip household chores, right? I work hard every day to earn money. Housework is not my job. But, still, I hate people who don't fulfill their responsibilities. You think making excuses is enough? Besides, ordering food costs money, so cook properly, okay? My husband insisted that I do the household chores as usual, despite my severe morning sickness. I understand that men can't experience pregnancy and might not grasp the difficulty of morning sickness, just like they can't experience menstruation. However, it makes no sense to me that he denies my suffering. A quick search online would show him how tough morning sickness can be. Despite this, my husband's attitude remained unchanged. As I lay down, stunned by his lack of understanding, he approached me with an annoyed expression. How long are you going to pretend to be sick and rest? I have a drinking party at home planned for today, and my boss is coming, so get ready. I was speechless at his insensitivity. What does he think of me, a pregnant woman? However, he did invite his boss over, and I had to entertain them, barely able to stand. Even as my pregnancy reached 9 months, my husband did not offer me any support. His attitude remained the same as before I was pregnant. Then came the new year. And it was decided that we would spend it at my husband's family home with all the relatives. I wanted to go to my own family home, but my husband wouldn't allow it. Don't you have any better clothes? All the relatives are coming. It's embarrassing to wear something like that. But, with my belly this big, anything tighter than oversized clothes is uncomfortable. He looked at me as if I were something filthy. Sure, I might not look my best, but that's how it is when you're pregnant. I had no expectations from him, but even on New Year's Eve, he irritated me. After a 3-hour train ride, we finally arrived at my in-laws' house. All right, let's toast to the last day of the year. He started drinking merrily with the relatives who had already arrived. My in-laws and other relatives were considerate of my pregnancy. But my husband just kept drinking. I didn't join them but rested in a room prepared by my in-laws. Then, hey. What are you doing here? Everyone is in the living room and you're sleeping here alone. That's out of line. What can I say? I can't drink and I'm really tired from traveling today. I don't want to hear such excuses. Well, fine. If you're just lying around here, you must be free, right? We've run out of beer, so go buy some. What? Just 3 boxes, hurry up, will you? Got it. I was shocked that he would say such a thing, even though he was drunk. Everyone in the living room seemed to be enjoying their drinks. And it didn't feel right to ask anyone else to go. Reluctantly, I had no choice but to obey my husband's demand, rather than his order. I sighed and said, I'll go buy it right now. Then my husband returned to the living room and I immediately left the house. Where are you going? It's quite late already. Just a quick shopping trip. I'll be fine. My father-in-law seemed worried about me going shopping at such a late hour. But I hurried outside, not wanting to hear any more from my husband. The thought of getting scolded by my husband made me hurry. And I started to jog towards the store to buy beer. Maybe that was a mistake. Just 5 minutes after leaving the house, I was suddenly hit by labor pains and collapsed right there. I suffered alone in excruciating pain. I couldn't even cry out because of the pain. And since everyone was in the living room, no one noticed me. Lying on the dark street, I was close to losing consciousness. It wasn't just the pain that was overwhelming. I was also panicking at the thought of being left outside in the cold, unnoticed by anyone. But after about 10 minutes, I saw my father-in-law running towards me. Hey. Are you okay? I was worried. It's dark, and you're pregnant. He quickly understood my situation and called an ambulance. As my consciousness started to clear a bit from the relief of his arrival, I managed to say, labor pains. Don't worry, the ambulance is on its way. I'll go call my son right away. No, it's okay. Please don't tell my husband. As I said that, my consciousness began to fade again. But soon the ambulance arrived, and I was taken to the hospital. I safely gave birth to a baby boy. He was born a week earlier than expected, but the baby was very healthy. And I was moved to tears of joy and relief. However, the only people waiting outside my hospital room were my father-in-law and mother-in-law. I'm sorry for making you come out here. That's okay, but was the baby born safely? Yes. A very healthy boy. Thank you so much. You were barely conscious. We were so worried. It was the same with my wife's labor pains, too severe. It reminded me of that time. But, about your husband. Are you sure we shouldn't call him? You said not to call him, even with your last strength. We thought there must be a reason, so we haven't called. Yes, that's right. My in-laws were quite concerned about why I didn't want my husband called. They must have found it strange, but I had my reasons. My husband was drunk as usual, and while he was initially very excited about the baby, that changed recently. At the beginning of the pregnancy, he was looking forward to the baby. We were both overjoyed, but it changed after about a month. That was when my morning sickness started. He said my morning sickness was just an excuse, a way to slack off. What? Saying morning sickness is an excuse. He can say such terrible things because he's never experienced it. I'm sorry. Even as my belly grew and I gained a bit of weight. He said I was exaggerating and that, as a housewife, I should fulfill my household duties. He hardly supported me as a pregnant woman. I thought about going back to my parents' house, but he said, "Who will do the housework if you're not here?" So I couldn't leave. That's why. I wanted to test him a bit. Testing? I went out for the errand because my husband asked me to buy beer, and I wondered. If I didn't come back without saying anything, would he worry about me? The due date is near. He should know that. That's what came to my mind in that situation. What? My foolish son asked you to go out for an errand. On this cold winter night. You should be resting at this stage of your pregnancy. What was he thinking? I thought something was odd. We told our son not to come home because you're pregnant. Really? I didn't know that. We thought you'd be uncomfortable in such a noisy environment. And you're already in your 10th month of pregnancy. Plus, it's quite a long trip to our house. Even if you came by taxi, it would be quite taxing on you. No. I didn't come by taxi. I took the train because a taxi would be too expensive. That foolish son of mine. I'm truly sorry. I apologize too. I'm sorry. So, has that foolish son of ours contacted you? Actually, I checked a while ago, but there's been no contact from him. Understood. Can you leave the rest to us? It's our responsibility as his parents too. We'll make sure he takes responsibility. For now, I'd like to stay and talk some more, if that's okay? Yes, of course. After that, my father-in-law returned to the family home. And my mother-in-law continued to listen to me. I hadn't told my parents about the emotional abuse from my husband and, of course, hadn't mentioned it to my in-laws either. As I had kept it all bottled up inside, the more I talked, the more I felt like pouring my heart out. The next morning, both sets of parents came to my hospital room. Congratulations on the birth. You did well. Thank you, Mom. We went to see the baby and chatted about everyday things. When we returned to the hospital room, my usually quiet father-in-law spoke up. Is it time? Yes. Please go ahead. With that, my father-in-law briefly left the room and then came back in. Behind him was my husband, his face swollen. Congratulations on the birth. Now I'm a father too. I have to step up. The moment he said that, my father-in-law slapped him without hesitation. My husband stood there, shocked, as silence fell over the room. Then, breaking the silence, my father-in-law began to speak. Don't you have something to say before that? I'm sorry for what I've done until now. I didn't mean to bully you. I just didn't know being pregnant was that hard. How many times do I have to tell you not to make such excuses? This foolish son of mine. My father-in-law's face turned red with anger as soon as my husband started speaking. He looked like a strict father from an old era. I was the same, and so was your father. Supporting your wife as a pregnant woman and as your spouse is a given, isn't it? Can't you even do the basics expected of a husband? When you came to ask for our daughter's hand in marriage, you said, "I work at a big corporation, so leave her to me." Do you think earning money excuses everything? No, that's not what I mean. That's exactly what you've been doing. Don't you even realize it? During this time, my parents were giving my husband cold stares. Eventually, they reached their limit and began yelling at him too. For about 30 minutes, my husband was scolded by all four, including my mother-in-law. Finally, my husband was kicked out of the hospital room by my father-in-law. Actually, after he got home yesterday, he asked our son about you. He said something like, maybe she's hungry and went to a store? That's when he got a beating from his father. Is that so? This isn't something that can be forgiven easily, but he'll be held responsible. After saying this to me, my mother-in-law apologized again and left the hospital room with my parents. I had informed her of my parents' visit, but I never expected it to turn into such a dramatic scene. After staying in the hospital for 5 days, I was discharged and went straight to my parents' house. As requested by my in-laws, I left the baby with my parents and went to my husband's family home. Sorry for troubling you to come here. No, it's okay. I am really sorry. It seems like the bruises on your face have increased. Or is it just me? I didn't do that. It was my brothers and other relatives. Turns out brothers raised in the same environment are alike. He got a good beating from them. I felt relieved hearing that my husband had been taken to task by his relatives over the past 5 days. Well, that proves who was really in the wrong. I'm truly sorry from the bottom of my heart. So, can you forgive me? What? I've reflected these past 5 days. I'll be a proper husband and father from now on, please forgive me. A husband and father? Can you not joke about this? What? I'm going to divorce you and I have no intention of letting you see our son. As I said this, my husband's face fell in shock. I had already decided this the day after I gave birth, and my in-laws knew about it. I wouldn't let my son be raised by such a worthless person. I'll be demanding compensation for the emotional abuse and make sure you pay child support. And I'll be letting the people at the company where I used to work know about this. So don't worry. What? No. Don't make decisions on your own. We're not getting a divorce, right? And what do you mean, letting the company people know? Don't do anything strange. But you often brought them home for drinks. And they were happy for us when they found out about my pregnancy. I can't just get divorced and act like nothing happened, can I? You're going to ruin my reputation. What are you saying at this point? It's all your responsibility. I raised him as my only son with all my effort. But I never imagined he would become such a garbage-like person in society. Maybe he should live his life full of regrets. No way, that can't be true. And you're talking about divorce. What about the child? I haven't even held him yet. You expect to act like a father without having supported me during pregnancy and childbirth? What you did was just make a child irresponsibly. Can you not pretend to be a father? But that's all from me for now. Could you please take care of the rest? Thanks for coming all this way. While my husband was overwhelmed with despair, even hyperventilating a bit, I ignored him and went back to my parents' house. I sent a completed divorce form to my in-laws, and my father-in-law made my husband submit it. My ex-husband ended up moving back to his parents' house, under their supervision for a while. My in-laws covered the part of the compensation and child support that he couldn't pay. And they will keep an eye on him until he finishes paying. I've confirmed the transfer of the compensation and child support. Thank you for everything to the end. We troubled you till the end. I'm truly sorry. From now on, we'll make sure our foolish son thoroughly reflects on his actions. His salary will go towards repaying me, and he won't have any free time. I think he'll learn his lesson. I see. Thank you. Even after the divorce, my in-laws remained on my side and planned to strictly discipline my ex-husband. My ex-husband contacted me wanting to see our son just once, but I ignored it. I have no intention of letting my son meet him until he is an adult and decides to do so on his own. Also, as I had been on friendly terms with my ex-husband's boss and had his contact information, I confessed everything about the recent turmoil. As a result, my ex-husband's reputation at work plummeted, and it seems he's struggling both in his personal and professional life. As for me, I'm living with my parents for now, enjoying my days with my son with their support. Being a single mother will surely bring many challenges, but I'm determined to overcome them. Any hardship feels bearable compared to living with such an ex-husband.
My husband usually falls asleep right away and comes home late at night. But this day was different. I'm not going to work from tomorrow. What? What are you talking about? I'm barely managing the loan payments. I don't need your petty cash. I'll pay off the loan in full. So, if you're going to say that much, that's it. Show me your spirit. My name is Ashley. I work as a full-time employee and lead a fairly busy life. I've been married to my husband, Steve, for 3 years. We bought our dream home a year ago, and now we live there together. A successful job, a home filled with our preference. To outsiders, my life might seem perfectly smooth, but I have one worry. It's my husband's drinking habit. With the completion of our new home, my husband's department changed. Perhaps due to stress, he started drinking excessively. In a drunken state, my husband would raise his voice. Ashley, alcohol, beer, whiskey, anything. Just bring it to me. Steve, you're drinking too much. What? Shut up. I'm tired. You wouldn't understand. I understand that you're tired, but you've been drinking more frequently and heavily lately. You're nagging. Just bring it already. I'm just worried about your health, Steve. I said, shut up. If you've got time to yap, move it, trash. Enduring my husband's verbal abuse, I would give in and bring him alcohol. I was fed up with these days. But what drove me to the edge was the next day after my husband drank. He tends to black out when drunk and doesn't remember anything the next day. Good morning, Ashley. You seem down. What's wrong? Good morning. You drank a lot yesterday. Are you okay? I'm fine, but did I say something to you again? Yes, but you don't remember, do you? Sorry, I don't mean to. I always wake up and forget everything. But I feel like I might have said something. I'm sorry. Saying this, my husband started cleaning diligently as a way to make up for his behavior. The day after he insults me, he always helps with the housework. Every time I see him like this, I feel indescribable emotions. One day, after about a year of this routine, my husband started his drunken tirade again. Steve, again? Just bring me the damn alcohol, you wretch! Reaching my limit, I decided to confront him directly. Steve, can I talk to you for a second? While taking out a cold beer, my husband asked, What? It's about the alcohol you're holding right now. I wish you would reduce the amount and frequency of your drinking. Ashley, are you worried about my health? That's part of it, but when you drink, you become a completely different person. You say horrible things to me, day after day. I can't take it anymore. I'm sorry, but I want to drink to relieve my work stress. I understand. I'm not asking you to stop completely, just to reduce the frequency and amount. Finally, after a serious talk, he seemed reflective, dropping his shoulders in worry. After returning the beer to the fridge, my husband said, I need to cool my head off, and left the house abruptly. Did I say too much? But it's for our future, so I had to be firm. Worried about my husband who had just left, I decided to wait for him in the living room. About 2 hours later, I heard the front door open. Welcome back, Steve. Huh? My husband's face was bright red when he returned. The smell of alcohol was so strong that I could sense it from the distance. I hesitantly asked, Steve, you didn't, by any chance, drink, did you? So what if I did? You were complaining so much. I went out to drink. What's the point of that? It doesn't matter if you drink outside instead of at home. Shut up. I'm drinking with my own money. It's none of your business. It is my business. We are barely managing our living expenses because you drink so much, and I'm the one paying for our home loan. Huh. Acting all high and mighty over just $1,500 a month. Just $1,500. We're a couple. We should be working together more. Shut up. I'm the head of this house. Don't tell me what to do. He called me a worthless wife and went upstairs. Alone in the living room, tears streamed down my face. Why? Why does it always end up like this? I always hope that if we talk it through, he'll understand. But my expectations are always shattered. He shows no sign of understanding or changing. That reality weighs heavily on my heart. Since that day, my husband started drinking outside. He'll come home late, reeking of alcohol, and insult me. Yet, when I see his kind side, I just can't bring myself to hate him, and my resolve for divorce weakens. I love my husband and don't want to think about divorce, but I can't take it anymore. Unable to find a solution alone, I decided to discuss this matter with my sister. After explaining everything over the phone, she said in a low voice, I see. That's a tough situation. Right? I love Steve, but I'm struggling with his drinking. From what you've told me, it's clear you're at your limit. Well, I've heard similar stories. One couple used a certain method to solve their problem. A certain method? Eager to know, I asked, and my sister playfully said, "Want to know?" "Yes, tell me." "Alright, I'll let you in on the strategy." However, the strategy my sister shared could have been more impressive. "Wait, sister, are you sure that strategy will work?" "It's fine. A friend of mine got inspired by one story and it worked out. I'll help you too." I'm worried. On doing some research, the story is about a diligent wife and a lazy husband, where the wife, through her love and wit, helps her alcoholic husband recover from his drunken life. One day, the husband, drunk, comes home with a large sum of money, thinking he'll skip work if he has that money. The wife hides it. She convinces her inebriated husband that night's events were a dream, prompting him to reform and never repeat such an incident. The story fits the saying, "Drink, but don't let alcohol consume you." There are even articles about alcoholics who vowed to reform after hearing this story. I don't know if it will work, but I have to try something. From that day, I began planning with my sister, desperately clinging to this straw of hope. A few days later, as I was waiting in the living room, my sister called. "Hey, Ashley, I did just as we planned. I met Steve, dropped my wallet in front of him, let him pick it up, and then gave it to him as a thank you. That's what we wanted, right?" "Yes, thank you. Did he recognize you?" "I did a wrinkle makeup and disguised myself as an old lady." Steve was so drunk, I don't think he noticed. I see. He was drinking again today. I followed him from his office. He went bar hopping to 3 different pubs and then fell asleep on the park bench. You're kidding. Does he always do that? Despite our ongoing plan, anxiety was already taking over me. Sensing my feelings, my sister confidently said over the phone, "It's okay. The important part starts now, right?" "Yes, but..." "Steve went back to drinking after I gave him the wallet, so I think he'll be home late. The rest is up to you, Ashley." "No, okay, I understand." With a final word of encouragement, "Good luck," my sister hung up. A few hours later, "I'm home." My heavily drunk husband returned. "Welcome back. You have work tomorrow. Shouldn't you go to bed early?"
"Huh? Work? I'm not going to that anymore."
"Stop joking. We have our life to consider. Don't say you're not going to work." My husband grumbled with a flushed face. "You're so persistent," and then blurted out mockingly, "Anyway, I'm not working from tomorrow on." What are you talking about? I'm barely managing the loan payments. I don't need your petty cash. I'll pay off the loan in full. Haha. In full? That's impossible, right? It is possible. Look at this. He pulled out the wallet, showing me the cash and checks inside. Where did you get all this money? Well, today, as I was sobering up in the park, I found an old lady's wallet. And when I returned it, she gave me this as a reward. Cool, right? That's too good to be true. But I used the money in this wallet to drink a ton. The fact that I'm drunk is the proof. I'll cash the check tomorrow. Then I'll pay off the loan in one go. Really? Can I trust you with that? That's what I'm saying. We don't need your money anymore. Okay, then I won't pay anymore. Sure. I'll have another drink then. He took a beer from the fridge and started drinking constantly. I headed to the bedroom, leaving my husband behind. Do people change that easily? It feels like things are getting worse. Everything depends on his reaction tomorrow. Feeling anxious, I forced myself to sleep. The next day, after hiding that night's wallet inside the house, I woke up my husband. Hey Steve, it's already 7:30. Aren't you getting up? My husband groaned and frowned. I told you, I'm not going to work anymore. What are you talking about? You're supposed to go to work as usual today, right? I told you, I don't need to. With all those checks I have. What are you talking about? There's no such check, right? Huh? My husband sat up quickly, his face turning pale as he looked around frantically. Where's the wallet that was here? Wallet? I don't know. Did you have a wallet when you came back yesterday? I didn't see it. You're kidding, right? Was that all a dream? Barely suppressing my laughter, I confronted my husband. By the way, you said yesterday that you would pay the loan from now on. I can trust you with that, right? Not You said it, right? Don't tell me you don't remember. I remember saying it, but that was because of the check. That's what I'm saying. There's no such thing. What do you mean? The loan talk was real, but the check was a dream? So I promised to pay the loan without any money? He looked early panicked, almost foaming at the mouth. Looking down at him, I said firmly, What are you going to do? I trusted and asked you because you said you would pay. Sorry, it seems I was dreaming. A dream? Do you think that excuse will work? I've been patient all this time. No matter how much I asked, you never quit drinking, did you? I even thought about divorce because our life got tough due to your drinking expenses. Since you said you would pay the loan, I thought. But if you can't pay, I guess there's no choice.
Wait. Please don't talk about divorce. I love you, Ashley.
You love me? Then why don't you consider my feelings more? When you drink, you become a terrible person, much worse than you think.
There is...
I want to be with you too, but if you continue to be consumed by alcohol, I can't stay with you. After stating this clearly, my husband broke down in tears and knelt.
I'm sorry, really sorry. I didn't realize I was pushing you to the edge. It's all because of the alcohol. No, it's because of my weak will that down in alcohol.
Do you understand now?
Yeah, I realized how shallow I was through this incident. I'll stop drinking. Actually, I'm truly sorry for everything.
Saying this, my husband apologized deeply. Since then, he truly stopped drinking a single drop of alcohol and started coming straight home. As I declared, I stopped paying the loan, and all his drinking money went to the loan instead. He also helped with the housework as usual, which was a great relief. A year later, my husband focused on his job and made a successful career advancement. I learned later that although he was capable, his bad drinking habits at company parties had hindered his promotion. Furthermore, later on, we were blessed with a child we had always wished for. Our home is now truly in the state of smooth sailing. However, it's about time I would tell him the truth. One evening, when my husband returned from work, I decided to reveal the truth about that day a year ago. You know, Steve, there's something I need to talk about.
Huh? What's up all of a sudden?
Does this look familiar? When I showed him the wallet, he widened his eyes in shock.
This is the wallet I got from that old lady. Why is this here? It wasn't a dream?
Actually, that old lady was my sister.
My sister-in-law? What does this all mean? I don't understand.
I revealed everything to my husband. Back then, Steve, you changed completely when you drank alcohol. It was too much for me to bear. I felt bad for deceiving you like this, but I thought you wouldn't change otherwise. The check was fake, and it was all an act set up by me and my sister. I'm sorry for lying. Then, my husband smiled gently and rubbed my back.
Why are you apologizing? Actually, I'm the one who should be sorry.
Steve,
I was able to change because of you. I'm sorry for making you go to such lengths. I was truly hopeless back then. It's embarrassing as a person. I won't ever make you feel that way again.
thank you, Steve. I'm happy to hear you say that. Now I can trust him. I know he's changed. I took out his favorite beer from the fridge. Offering it to him with a smile, I said, "Why not have a drink today, just for a change?"
Is it okay?
Of course. Thank you for holding out for a whole year.
Seriously, I've been wanting to drink for a while.
But when I handed him the beer, he paused for a moment and then set the can on the table. "Steve, what's wrong?" Aren't you going to drink it?
I'd rather not. I don't want to risk ruining the happy life I have now with Ashley because of alcohol.
Steve, you have changed.
I'm done being controlled by alcohol.
I'm so glad. Thus, despite many ups and downs, my husband successfully reformed. I'm sure we can lead a happy life together from now on.
My name is Rachel. I'm currently 29 years old and living with my husband Stefan and his parents in our family home. The reason for this is that Stefan's mother often falls ill, and both Stefan and I, along with his father who works at the office, are concerned about her. If something were to happen to her while she's alone at home, there's nothing his father could do from the office. However, it was also challenging for either Stefan or me to keep visiting his parents' home frequently. So, I suggested that we move in with them. I work from home, so I'm mostly around the house. Stefan's mother is generally well, except when she has health issues. So it's not like she needs constant care. If the concern is about having someone in the house, it makes sense for me, who works from home, to be there with Stefan's mother. As a result of this discussion, we decided to move in with Stefan's parents. My own parents have passed away, so his parents told me to think of them as my own. Stefan is a very kind and considerate person, and his parents are also very kind. I grew fond of them quickly. However, I just couldn't warm up to Stefan's sister, my sister-in-law Kelly. It seems like Kelly dislikes me, that she's always been harsh with me. Hey, Rachel. It's been a while since I visited, and you can't even entertain properly? These cookies are just something you can buy at any supermarket, right? Really? After all, I gave my blessing to your marriage to my brother. Why can't you be more thoughtful? I'm sorry. Kelly always complains like this when neither Stefan's mother, father, nor Stefan is around. I got along well with my in-laws, so I thought I wouldn't experience any mistreatment. But since Kelly returned from abroad a year ago, she has been picking on me constantly. You might not have been out of the US, but abroad. People judge you by what you wear and what you serve. It's not like the US where you can live carelessly. You wouldn't understand, Rachel, since you don't work. Living without thinking isn't normal. But I do work, even though it's from home. I decided to stand up for myself. Sister, I do work. What? What are you talking about? You're always at my parents' house. You were there to greet me today and last time, not my mom. Aren't you always here? I work from home, so it's inevitable that I'm here. Work from home? Doing what? That can't be true. Working means like my brother Stefan, who actually works. I have been abroad, using that experience in my work. Are you saying your home job is like a house guard or something? That's the worst. Are you just unemployed? No, I'm not unemployed, it's just that we don't need unemployed people in our house. Until now, my parents and brother have been too kind to say anything to you. But don't think you can keep doing the same things. If you continue being unemployed, I'll kick you out of this house. Kick out. I'm serious. At this rate, unemployed people will take over our family home. Listen, find a job within a month or leave. After saying this, my sister-in-law left without even eating the snacks I had prepared. I was left pondering what to do next. This was the 5th time my sister-in-law had come to our house when I was the only one home. I have told Stefan every time she visits and what she says. Stefan has told me, if it escalates, let's discuss it again. Neither Stefan nor I paid much attention, thinking she would eventually get bored. But to call me unemployed and tell me to leave the house. I'm not unemployed since I am working, albeit from home. I'm not sure if explaining my home-based work will make her understand. I sighed. Now, I have to explain to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, who know my sister-in-law well, what she said to me. She talks about kicking me out. But she doesn't realize that the peaceful life in this house is because of Stefan and me. It's all so frustrating. At dinner that day, I told my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Stefan about my sister-in-law's visit and her calling me unemployed and telling me to leave. They were all surprised since they knew about my job. Eventually, my father-in-law sighed and said, "Okay, I'll talk to Kelly." However, his attempt to persuade her didn't go well. He reported back, looking dejected, "She blocked me on Messenger. Seems like she's also blocking my calls." Hearing this, my mother-in-law said determinedly, "I'll contact her next." But after a while, she said, "She's blocked me too." Finally, Stefan said, "I'll try talking to her, no harm in trying." He started the conversation casually without mentioning our issue, asking, "Long time no see. How are you?" That's Stefan, knowing how to handle his sister. According to what he learned from her, she plans to kick me out regardless of my job and then live in our family home herself. When asked why she wanted to live in the family home, she just evaded the question. While we were investigating and taking action regarding my sister-in-law, the 1-month deadline she had set was approaching. On the day of the deadline, she came to the house as expected. "There you are, still at home today. Didn't you think to find a job after hearing what I said? As I told you before, I am working. I work from home. Haven't you heard about it recently? Remote work and such." "I don't know. I've been abroad all this time. I don't know any strange English terms. Even abroad, I thought there were many home-based jobs. If there's internet, you should be able to work from home. My sister-in-law must have used the internet for work too. Why can't she understand what I'm saying?" I wondered why she couldn't understand. But then I thought I didn't need to force her to understand. I know from what Stefan told me. Even if I worked outside, my sister-in-law intends to find fault with my job and kick me out of the house. Therefore, it's impossible to convince her about my work-from-home job. She'll probably nitpick whatever I do anyway. I can't stand it that someone like you, a drain on our resources, is living in my parents' house and using my parents' and brother's money as if it were your own. Don't let unemployed squat here forever. Leave now. I knew all along that my sister-in-law wanted me out of the house. She thinks Stefan is on her side and believes she can easily kick me out. Yes. I understand. Arguing with my sister-in-law here would only prolong the conversation. I nodded my head in agreement. As soon as I obediently agreed to leave the family home, my sister-in-law's mood improved. "That's right. Unemployed like you have no right to be in my family home. And from now on, using my brother's money is forbidden. He who does not work, neither shall he eat." My sister-in-law laughed loudly. Then, Stefan emerged from inside the house. Then, by that logic, the one with the least right to eat here would be you, sister. My sister-in-law froze and gradually paled at Stefan's sudden appearance. "Why is Stefan here? Shouldn't you be at work today?" My sister-in-law always came when she knew I was the only one at home. My father-in-law and Stefan are usually at work on weekdays. And my mother-in-law goes to a cafe with her friends every Monday. She always timed her visits to our house accordingly. In other words, being at home at that time meant encountering my sister-in-law. Therefore, Stefan, my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law had taken the day off from work today. And my mother-in-law had cancelled her plans with her friends. As they emerged from inside the house, my sister-in-law swallowed hard. However, she still seemed to think she had the upper hand and said, "Great. Once this unemployed woman is gone, the four of us can live together again, just family. My mother-in-law sighed upon hearing this. What are you talking about? You never even cared about us. What? When I fell ill 2 years ago, you were in the US, not abroad. You never visited me once. What are you saying? I was always abroad. We've long since known that's a lie. My sister-in-law's face grew pale. We had hired a detective agency to investigate her actions. What we found out was that she had never been abroad. She pretended to be abroad and thus never returned home. Apparently, she had lied about living abroad to everyone except her close friends. I always thought you were vain, but I didn't realize it was to this extent. As my mother-in-law sighed, my sister-in-law glared at me, her face turning red. Because you've always been here, I couldn't come back to my family home. So, it's best if you leave this house. Get out of my house quickly. I understand. I will leave, so please stop causing a scene in front of the house. Really? You'll leave? Despite sensing that my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and Stefan were not on her side. My sister-in-law seemed surprised that I agreed to leave so easily. She gaped at me, and I nodded my head in confirmation. I need to prepare to leave, so can you please go home for today? I'm busy. Once you leave, make sure to contact me. After I clearly said I would leave, my sister-in-law seemed relieved and quickly went home. When she was out of sight, my father-in-law, mother-in-law, Stefan, and I nodded to each other. It was really good that my sister-in-law didn't come inside the house. The house is already empty, after all. A month ago, the day my sister-in-law told me to leave, we had a family meeting and decided to move out with my in-laws. Stefan and I had been talking about buying a house, so we decided to move into a duplex home. I was worried that my father-in-law and mother-in-law might not want to leave this familiar house. But they said, now, Rachel, who cares for us every day, is more important to us than our own daughter, who doesn't show her face in difficult times. We can't be ungrateful to Rachel, who has helped us financially. Just to accommodate our daughter, who only comes by occasionally to ask for money. My sister-in-law didn't believe in my home-based work and called me unemployed, but I actually earned $300,000 a year from it. I was the one who paid for the surgery and hospital fees when my mother-in-law fell ill. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are still grateful for that. I decided to pay for the maintenance of this house and asked my father-in-law and mother-in-law to prioritize their health, while Stefan's money was saved. My sister-in-law, who had neglected the family home, didn't know who had been supporting it. Moreover, she called me unemployed and a burden. I couldn't have sympathy for such a person. Since she wanted to live in this house, we decided to let her have her wish. Stefan, my in-laws, and I wouldn't live with her, but since she wanted the house, that should be enough for her. We finished moving and started a peaceful life in the duplex house. At the same time, I sent a message to my sister-in-law saying, we've completed the move. My sister-in-law must not be foolish, so she would surely check the house at least once. And when she sees the vacated house, she'll be in a hurry to contact us. However, my sister-in-law did something unexpected. Suddenly, I got a call from her. Hey. There's no one inside, so I can't get in. Of course, no one is inside and the keys don't work. Nobody lives there anymore. I can't keep the movers waiting. Send someone to the house. Stefan and Dad might be at work, but Mom should be free. Tell her to stop playing around and come home. Movers? What are you talking about? The movers are for moving, obviously. Don't you even know that? Is that why you're unemployed? Because you can't do any job properly and always get fired? I know what movers do. I just used them recently for our move. But I thought my sister-in-law would use movers much later. I never expected her to hire them before realizing we all had moved out. Nobody lives in that house anymore. Huh? Stefan, my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and I have already moved to our new house. If you wanted to live in that house, you need to make a contract. I was thinking of introducing you to a real estate agent. You can't live there yet, since you haven't made a contract, right? My sister-in-law raised her voice over the phone. What? What are you saying? I thought I could live in this house from today. So I vacated my old rundown apartment. I can't go back there now. That was a bit hasty. Enough. Stop it already. Why are our parents and brother staying with you? Someone like you, unemployed, should be discarded. I was getting tired of this. How long will I be called unemployed? Look, sister. I'm not unemployed. I am working. There are many ways of working that you might not understand. I even have an annual income of $300,000. That's nothing compared to you, who were laid off and then unemployed, trying to rely on your family home. The detective agency revealed that my sister-in-law was laid off and had no money, trying to return to her family home. That's why Stefan, my in-laws, and I decided to move without her knowing, not wanting to be exploited by her. If you knew all that, you could be a little nicer to me. If what you're saying is true, then you have money, right? Then you can help me out, right? Huh? Help you? Why would I help someone who has always ridiculed me? And another thing, okay? Didn't you say, he who does not work, neither shall he eat? Even if we lived together, I would kick out someone unemployed like you right away. But, I quickly hung up the phone. There were a few more calls after that, so I set them to be automatically rejected. When my sister-in-law realized she couldn't contact me, she tried to contact Stefan, my father-in-law, and mother-in-law, but it seems like she couldn't get help from anyone. Unable to get our new address from anyone, she ended up apologizing to the movers while crying. Later, she reluctantly took refuge in a close friend's house. But because she never contributed to food costs or found a job, she was kicked out. She seems to be repeating this cycle, going from one friend's house to another and being kicked out, since she had never involved herself before. My sister-in-law didn't know the workplaces of my father-in-law and Stefan or our neighborhood relationships, so she couldn't find us. Eventually, she'll probably end up with no one to rely on. Hopefully, she finds a job before then. By the way, I found out I was pregnant during my last visit to the hospital. So it's really good that my sister-in-law's issues are resolved. I didn't want to deal with her while carrying a child. From now on, I want to enjoy life with my in-laws, Stefan, and our child. I've filed for divorce. As compensation, I'll take the house, Jack said, lounging in the living room when I returned from a long business trip. The house was in a terrible state, just as I had expected, with a messy living room littered with garbage and a kitchen reeking of bad odors, with unwashed dishes everywhere. Finally fed up with him, I simply responded, "Fine." He seemed to expect resistance and was momentarily stunned, but soon looked relieved and began to jump around saying, "Really? I'm not leaving this place. It's you who should leave." I looked on with cold eyes, secretly smirking to myself. People who toy with others' hearts deserve a taste of their own medicine. My name is Rebecca. I'm 37 and run a popular matchmaking business. I started my business at 25 and have connected with many people. But amidst the busyness and joy of work, my own marriage prospects were bleak. By 35, I had resigned myself to possibly never marrying. That's when I met my current husband, Jack. Our meeting was purely coincidental. I was dining with a friend and Jack happened to be sitting at the next table. Acquainted with my friend. We ended up drinking together and hit it off. Impressed with my business, Jack kept saying, "Wow, that's amazing." I felt proud of my work and didn't mind his admiration. I'd never dated a younger man, but when he asked for my contact, I gave it to him. Our relationship began casually. And I found comfort in his adeptness at handling women, feeling like I could be myself. He also had a charmingly needy side. Making puppy eyes and clasping his hands together in a plea, which I found endearing. I had always wanted a manly man, someone to lead me, but as I advanced in my career, I started to appreciate this different kind of relationship. After dating for about a year, Jack proposed. "Wait, I'm 5 years older than you, you know? Is that okay?" I blurted out impulsively. "It doesn't matter," he replied as usual. "Besides, you don't look 5 years older." As he complimented me and I was feeling good about it, he added, "There's one troubling thing I need to confess. If you're uncomfortable, feel free to reject my proposal," he said with sad puppy eyes, stirring my maternal instincts. I told him, "We'll overcome anything together. That's what marriage is." And he brightened up, calling me wonderful and holding my hand, making me feel very tender. In hindsight, I played right into his hands. His confession was about being a divorcee with unpaid property division, leaving him without savings. I was surprised to learn he was divorced, as I had no idea. Apparently, his ex-wife was quite selfish, agreeing to divorce only if she received the property division. I felt terribly sorry for Jack, seeing him as a victim of such a brazen woman. Fortunately, I had the financial means to help, so I replied with a smile. "It's okay, we'll overcome this together." Helping someone is also a kind of pleasure, it seems. He was very grateful and promised, "Once we're married, I'll dedicate myself to you." However, it didn't take long to realize that his words were a complete lie. To spare him the embarrassment of having no savings, I suggested, "How about living in a new house, maybe my family home? My parents are moving out." The family home is an old single-family house in an upscale neighborhood, a bit away from downtown LA. My elderly parents found it cumbersome to maintain, and expressed a desire to move into a more convenient apartment in New York City because they enjoy going to the theater. When he saw the family home, he instantly fell in love with it, exclaiming with great joy, "I can't believe I get to live in such a magnificent house. The house is in my name, so don't worry. It was to be my inheritance anyway." He thanked me profusely, and we began our new life. However, his sloppy habits soon became apparent. He wouldn't throw away trash, left clothes everywhere, kept the bathroom light on, and never cleaned up after baths. Living with him was like living with a 5-year-old. I hate messy rooms, so at first, I cleaned up after Jack myself. But gradually I ran out of patience. "Hey, enough is enough," I scolded him sharply. "I told you to put the trash in the bin." He sulked like a child and retreated to his room. How unpleasant he is. The one who promised to dedicate himself wholeheartedly, where is he now? He didn't even bother to pretend to be tidy at the start. Being sloppy seems too normal for him to even consider hiding it. Of course, he doesn't do any housework. No matter how busy I am with work, he casually asks, "Hey, isn't dinner ready?" I'm hungry. When I subtly inquire about his contribution to the living expenses, he makes a face as if he's about to cry and says, "I still have to pay the property division." I began to suspect him. Would a regular office worker like him really be burdened with such high property division payments? Yet, believing I trust him, he asks, "Could you lend me some money? I'm struggling this month because I treated my juniors At first, I obliged, but as he became too reliant, I asked him to keep a household ledger. He reacted hurt. Don't you trust me? I'm shocked you think that way. I couldn't stand it anymore, and one day I firmly told him. Actually, I don't earn that much. I'm barely managing the living expenses. So, don't expect any allowance. His obvious disappointment was evident as he turned his back on me saying, "What?" His behavior worsened afterward. Not only did he not improve his habits, but he also started drinking every night, making a mess, and not coming home. I complained to my mother that this marriage was a mistake. She had initially opposed the marriage and advised me, try to endure for a year. Effort to come together is necessary. Then I'll listen to your story. She also pointed out, as a marriage consultant, it wouldn't look good for you to divorce so quickly. I felt tears of frustration, thinking this must be part of Jack's calculation. I cursed myself for not seeing through his kindness before marriage, but now it was too late. As a small consolation, I wrote my name on a divorce paper and stored it in the bedroom drawer, gritting my teeth every time I looked at it, thinking, after a year. Time flew, and a year passed. I had to go on a business trip for about a week to open a new branch. Jack, unusually cheerful lately, saw me off saying, "That's tough, have a good trip." Returning home, Jack was lounging in the living room and started yelling, "You were thinking of divorcing me?" I found the divorce paper in the bedroom. How cruel to talk about overcoming together and then think of divorcing. That was. Before I could say anything, he showed his sad face. "Don't make excuses. Do you know how shocked I was?" He confidently declared. "I filed for divorce. I'll take the house as compensation." I couldn't grasp the situation for a moment, exhausted from the trip. When I asked, "You filed for divorce?" he laughed mockingly, thinking I was troubled. "Yeah, probably. Who else would marry a nagging old maid like you?" As I prepared to retort, the messy living room, the kitchen reeking with unwashed dishes, and the overall dreadful state of the house caught my eye. The thought of cleaning it up made me feel weary. If I divorced, I wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. I wanted to jump for joy. But I kept a serious face and asked, "So, about the compensation?" "Of course. I thought I married a businesswoman, but you're broke. No decent allowance, it's practically a fraud." Jack openly admitted it was a marriage for money, now that there was no need to hide. I felt the last of my feelings for him blow away. He continued, "Also, it's for the mental anguish I suffered from you in the past year. Nagging about chores, tidying up, demanding a household ledger. That's an invasion of privacy. Think about a man's dignity. If I were the breadwinner and he were the homemaker, this would be normal. But Jack stubbornly insists he's the victim." I realized talking was useless and simply said, "Fine. All right." He seemed surprised by my lack of resistance and asked, "Really? I can have the house?" I firmly replied, "If it means cutting ties with you, the house is a small price to pay." Jack momentarily looked hurt but quickly recovered, ranting, "A woman who can't get a man is talking big. Fine, really. I won't leave this place. You're the one who should leave." Thinking I might change my mind, he excitedly searched for movers, thrusting a phone number in front of me and saying, "Call them now." I shrugged, "There's no need to rush. I'll leave soon. I have a moving company I use for business. I'll ask them." I contacted them and, by chance, they could come the next day with an all-inclusive package. Jack, thinking he was lucky, joyously said, "I'm relieved I don't have to see your face anymore." His obliviousness to what awaited him made me struggle to contain my laughter. I temporarily stored my furniture and belongings in a storage unit, and started living in a hotel until I found a new place. It was a lifestyle I had wanted to try, so after transferring the house ownership, I forgot about Jack and enjoyed a luxurious life. Returning to a beautifully cleaned room every day and dining in bars and restaurants. I recovered from my business trip's fatigue and felt motivated to work hard again. Then, 5 days after leaving the house, I casually checked my private phone to find 100 missed calls from Jack. I had been busy with work and hadn't paid much attention to personal calls. After calling back my parents to apologize, I learned why Jack called and decided to ignore his calls. All within my expectations. Eventually, unable to bear it, Jack showed up at my office, yelling at the reception. "Hey, get the boss out here." He was restrained by security guards. The thought that he was my ex-husband was embarrassing. As a marriage consultant, having a failed marriage was terrible for my reputation. Thinking this was part of his plan, I reluctantly told him where I was staying and sent him home. When he visited the hotel at night, he looked around the lobby in surprise. Seeing me, he asked, "What's this luxury hotel? Aren't you broke?" I replied coolly, "I just didn't have money to waste on someone who loafs around without contributing." Biting his lip, Jack asked, "So really, how much do you make a year?" Thinking it didn't matter anymore, I answered, "Around $300,000. He jumped from his chair in shock. $300,000? It's none of your business anymore. We're strangers now. So, what do you want?" As I tried to move the conversation along, he hesitantly presented a document. It was a land lease contract with my parents as the landlords. This was sent to the house. "I can't possibly pay $5,000 a month." Hearing his trembling voice, I burst out laughing. "Of course, you can't. I said I'd give you the house, but I never said anything about the land, did I?" Jack clenched the document, looking frustrated as I laughed. "The house was in my name, but the land has always been my parents'," I explained with a chuckle. "So, I lived there for free under a use agreement. But if a stranger like you lives there, it naturally becomes a rental. If you stay without permission, that's property usurpation, right?" Jack banged on the desk in frustration. "This is like a trap. It's outrageous to say, if you can't pay, get out." "Well, what can you do?" I feigned concern, deliberately furrowing my brow. Jack grumbled unintelligibly. "Why not sell the house then? There's no need to be attached to that place, right?" When I made this seemingly light-hearted suggestion, Jack, having consulted a real estate agent, ranted. "They said it's too old, being 70 years old, and unsellable. Demolish it and sell the land," they said. "But the land isn't mine." I chuckled, "Well, that figures. Nobody would want to buy it, especially after paying for demolition." That's exactly what they told me. The location is good, but there are other properties available. Originally, my parents planned to demolish the house and sell the land. But they gave it to me cheaply when I, as their married daughter, said I wanted to live there. I alone had thought of renovating it in the future. So, Jack, by getting the house from me, is stuck with either continuing to pay $5,000 rent or bearing the cost of demolition, which should be around $20,000 for a 160 yards reinforced concrete structure. Essentially, he ended up with a house that costs a fortune just to own. Realizing this trick, he bombarded me with calls. Frustrated, he ruffled his hair. "Why didn't you tell me? I'm in such a mess because of this." "I didn't know," I replied with a laugh. "You asked for it, right? I didn't want it that much. It's her fault." Suddenly, he clammed up, realizing his slip. I smiled and teased. Maggie, right? She's remarried. Hasn't she?" Jack went pale, sweating profusely. "How do you know that name? Did he think I knew nothing?" I heard from a friend that you were seeing her even before marrying me. When I pulled out a detective agency's report showing photos of him with this Maggie, he snatched it away in panic. No use taking it. I have the data. Jack, confused, pleaded, please, keep this a secret. What is he thinking? There's no way I can keep it secret. You two will receive a claim for damages next week. Be prepared. Jack gasped for air, looking like a fish out of water. The cost of demolishing the house and paying for his affair. I wondered where he would find the money. Then, he blamed Maggie. It's her fault. She wanted to live in that upscale residential area, saying it would give her status. I glanced at the detective's report. Status, huh? Maybe she thought she'd get nicer treatment from her favorite guy from the nightclub if she lived in such a posh area. I showed him a photo of Maggie with the guy in a seedy street. He was shocked, not knowing this. But she was a lady. Indeed, a fine lady. Working at a club, right? Jack couldn't even sit properly anymore, slumping to the floor, knees shaking. So, when I said I couldn't live in the house anymore, she stopped contacting me. She thought you were rich. Makes sense if you spent all your salary on fun. And the story about paying compensation after a divorce was a lie too. Realizing how much I knew, he was at a loss for words. Bored, I yawned. Well, I'm going to rest now. As I stood up, Jack suddenly said, I was wrong. Please, give me another chance. I won't cheat again, and I'll do the chores and tidy up. Such a disgraceful scene in a luxury hotel lobby. Disappointed, I spoke to the front desk. Excuse me, this man is harassing me. Could you call the police? Hearing the police, Jack sprang up, screaming, no, 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 and ran off. He won't come near here again. Later, I heard Jack divorced Madoka and took a loan for the demolition. There were rumors he ended up on or was forced onto a deep-sea fishing vessel. But I don't know the details. As for me, I bought a new apartment in LA and enjoy my elegant single life. At work, I receive reports of many new couples being grateful for their happiness. Maybe I used up all my marriage luck on my job. But seeing happy couples makes me feel good too. Not a bad life, I think. When Zoe was born, the first thing Phil said was, oh, too bad, she looks like Wendy. Poor kid. It's unimaginable for someone to say such words about their newborn child. Phil's true intention from the beginning must have been just the money. He observed my struggles with childcare from a distance, merely commenting, babies sure are tough, huh, while sipping his drink. Since then, Phil has shown absolutely no interest in childcare. A useless wife who doesn't help with childcare deserves a divorce. And pay me $50,000 in compensation. Phil was laughing loudly with Erica. I was shaking with an anger I had never felt before. What does he think a child is? I will never hand Zoe over to such a man. Let him keep running from reality, living the easy life. The world won't go as he pleases. Sorry to burst his bubble, but he's going to hell, not heaven. My name is Wendy Morgan, a 43-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Phil, and our daughter, Zoe, who was born 2 years ago. We met at a friend's wedding after party 3 years ago. I work as a novelist, which means I lead a somewhat secluded life. Because of this, I'm quite shy, especially in the more relaxed atmosphere of the after party, which was quite different from the formal wedding reception. When I was about to leave the party quietly, Phil, who would later become my husband, approached me and asked, "Hey, are you leaving already?" My first impression of him was that he seemed like a sincere person. It turned out that Phil also wasn't comfortable with the party's atmosphere and was feeling bored. This encounter led us to start communicating, and eventually, we began dating. I noticed that Phil was a bit naive and out of touch with the world. One day, he said, "My parents are telling me it's time to become independent. I guess it's understandable since I've been living abroad, right? I'm still not used to life here, it's kind of scary." Phil was younger than me, already 35 at the time, and certainly an adult. Despite his international experience, he seemed a bit sheltered. However, his innocence and naivety stirred my maternal instincts. Before I knew it, I had invited Phil to live with me, and we started a cohabiting life. My house is a two-family home, with the first floor as my workspace and the second as our living space. It was around the time Phil had comfortably settled into my house. You know, my dad said he'd give us $5,000 if we had a child. "So, Wendy, let's get married." His proposal felt as casual as suggesting a trip. Having almost no experience in romance, I accepted his proposal. Eventually, I became pregnant. Being 40 years old, there were many things I had to be careful about. It coincided with the final episode of a long-running series I was writing. So, for the sake of Phil and our child, I decided to take a break from work. 2 years have passed since Zoe was born. Zoe has entered the terrible twos, often crying and resisting everything. I try my best to satisfy her needs, seeing it as a part of her growth. Wendy. Zoe is so loud I can't sleep. Can you make her quiet? One evening, Phil appeared in the living room and said so. It was just past 8 p.m. Phil had been out drinking at a company party the night before, and had gone straight to work from there. He was understandably exhausted. "I'm sorry. I think she'll settle down soon." I wanted to blame Phil for not coming home and instead going out to drink. But calming Zoe was my priority. If Zoe calmed down, Phil would be satisfied too. "You've got it easy, Wendy. You don't work and just stay at home. You only have to do household chores and take care of the child. I have to work every day." After saying that, Phil returned to the bedroom. I don't know where he picked up that phrase, but it has become his standard line lately. As a father who doesn't participate in childcare, Phil's words feel like a cliché to me, and I'm weary of them. When he learned I was pregnant, Phil was overjoyed. "Yes. Wendy, we did it. This means we get $5,000. Although I didn't want to hear such words. Phil quickly reported the pregnancy to his parents and seemed to have received the $5,000. He was as happy as if he had received a bonus. Common sense would suggest that this money from his parents was meant as a celebration gift. Typically, such money would be spent on things like baby clothes or milk. But Phil unhesitatingly pocketed it for himself. Despite this, I made sure to prepare a return gift for my in-laws using my own money. Phil is, for better or worse, naive and lacks common sense. Additionally, he seems to lack the skill to consider other people's feelings. The first words he said when Zoe was born were, "Oh, too bad, she looks like Wendy." Poor kid. It's hard to believe these were words for his newborn daughter. Phil was truly focused on the immediate $5,000 from the start. He just watched me struggle with childcare, saying, "Babies are tough, huh," while drinking alcohol. To this day, Phil has shown no interest in childcare. One day, I had to meet someone for work. Although I was on break, I wanted to prepare for my return by discussing a new project with my publisher. I called my parents to ask if they could take care of Zoe. Hearing this, Phil said, "Huh? Who does unemployed like you need to meet? Don't you think it's pitiful to leave your child and go somewhere? Terrible mother, the worst. This is what they call unfit to be a mother." His words were harsh. Even I couldn't help but retort. "Then why don't you look after Zoe? I'm sure she'd rather stay with her dad than go to her grandparents." Phil visibly distorted his face in response. Don't be ridiculous. Why should I have to spend time with the kid? I'm busy, I don't have time to look after a child. Busy, he says, but he's probably just going to the casino. Disgusted with Phil's words, I decided to stick to my original plan and leave Zoe with my parents. My father would come to pick her up in his car, as their house was a bit far away. However, since my father always drinks in the afternoon, I usually have to go pick her up myself. After finishing the meeting in the evening, I was preparing to go get Zoe when Phil unexpectedly appeared in the living room. He probably lost at casino and ran out of money early. I said, good timing, I'm about to go pick up Zoe. Can you drive me there? I thought that as her father, he should at least do that much. But as expected, Phil's response was, no, it's too bothersome. I wasn't disappointed, as I was ready to leave the house anyway. Then, surprisingly, Phil said something unexpected. Fine, I'll drive. I doubted my ears for a moment, but seeing Phil with the car keys heading to the parking lot, I felt for the first time that maybe he had some awareness of being a father. I was filled with a small joy, which was shattered as soon as I got into the car and closed the door. Since I'm driving, give me $300. He said this, extending his hand. So, this was his intention. My heart sank. I couldn't refuse now that I was already in the car. Zoe was waiting at my parents' house. With no other choice, I handed over the $300. Thanks. Just a little more and I would have won. Trust me, I'll win. He started the car, humming as if about to break into song. In hindsight, maybe it was a mistake to ask Phil to drive. We spent the drive in silence. As we were just a few kilometers from my parents' house, Phil's phone rang. He picked it up and started checking the messages. Phil, be careful. It's dangerous. You should park the car before checking your phone. As I warned him, Phil continued to look at his smartphone screen while driving. It's usual for me, I'm used to it. It's fine. He said this and even seemed to be replying to a message. Then, I felt the car subtly veer to the right. Watch out. I thought. Just as I saw the concrete barrier of the central reservation looming in front of us. Phil hastily turned the steering wheel. With a loud crash, the car came to a halt. I remember the airbags deploying and feeling a sense of pressure. As I heard distant sirens, I lost consciousness. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital bed. I tried to move a little. Ouch. A pain like numbness spread throughout my body. Honestly, when we hit the barrier, I thought it was the end. As we crashed, the first thing that flashed through my mind was Zoe. I wondered how Zoe was doing. Was she safely at my parents' house? I hoped Phil hadn't done anything strange. Right, what about Phil? As I looked around with just my eyes, a woman asked me, "Are you looking for your husband?" When I moved my gaze towards the voice, I saw a woman in the hospital room. "You are from today's meeting." Yes, she was the new representative from the publishing house I had a meeting with today. Her name was Janet Bradley, if I remember correctly. "Mrs. Morgan, your husband had minor injuries. So after treatment and examination, he went home. It's terrible, isn't it? Leaving without even visiting your room while you're in this condition." Janet seemed more upset than me. Apparently, she had called to thank me for the meeting today. But since the call came after the accident, someone at the hospital had taken the call and explained the situation to her. The hospital staff asked if it was okay to explain the situation to me. "Mrs. Morgan, you nodded strongly even though you were almost unconscious. You're too devoted to your work." Janet said this with a smile. "Your daughter is safe at your parents' house, so please don't worry. Also, if you don't mind, may I help you while you're in the hospital?" Knowing Phil was unreliable, I was grateful for Janet's offer. But I also felt conflicted about being a burden to her. Please let me help. I am your representative, after all. Encouraged by Janet's strong words, I decided to accept her help. Thanks to her devoted assistance, I was able to leave the hospital. However, since I had severely injured my back, I couldn't walk due to the pain and had to use a wheelchair for some time. Throughout my hospital stay, Phil never visited. He only occasionally sent emails asking for money, like transfer $300. It was my father who drove me from the hospital to my home. I was able to take Zoe home with me then. My parents, understanding the situation, offered to keep Zoe for a while longer. But I couldn't let that happen. I wanted to spend time with Zoe. Even when I said, "It's fine, Phil is there too," my father seemed uneasy, as if sensing something was wrong. However, he didn't pry further and just said, "Call me anytime if you need anything," before leaving. Fortunately, my house was built with the future in mind for living with my parents. So the first floor was barrier-free. I used to work there but spent most of my time on the second floor after getting married and taking a break. I had often stayed overnight on the first floor for work, so bedding was always available. The rooms on the first floor, less cluttered than those on the second, were spacious and safe for Zoe to play in due to the barrier-free design. I shifted from my wheelchair and managed to sit on the sofa. This was something I could do thanks to Janet's active involvement in my rehabilitation. Zoe noticed me sitting on the sofa and came running up to me. "Mommy, does your leg hurt? I will rub it to make it better." As she said that, Zoe gently stroked my leg. I couldn't help but hug her, overwhelmed with love for my gentle and precious child. How can Phil not see how precious she is? I am deeply grateful that Zoe wasn't in the car with Phil during the accident. I'm relieved that I was the only one who got seriously injured. I could feel a dark emotion towards Phil rising within me. For my sake, and more importantly, for Zoe's sake, I started to think about our future life with Phil. The day after I was discharged, Phil came to the room on the first floor. He had a bandage on his forehead, probably from an injury he sustained during the accident. This part is also my house? I thought it was just a 2-story apartment. It's not surprising he thought that since the house has separate entrances for the first and second floors. I had emailed him about my discharge the day before. But was he really not curious why I didn't return to the second floor? Probably not. He's a man who never cares about anything around him. A bit stunned, I looked at Phil, noticing an unfamiliar young woman behind him. She looked quite young, probably in her early 20s. This is Erica. She's young and cute, right? Totally different from Wendy. Sorry to spring this on you suddenly, Wendy, but I want you to leave this house. I'm going to marry Erica. His abrupt demand left me dumbfounded. However, the moment I saw the young woman, I had imagined this possibility. Then Phil began to talk about something even more outrageous. "You know, I've been thinking. That day, I drove because of your errand. And we had an accident, right? So, I'm the victim who got dragged into this. You're the perpetrator. Your injury might be self-inflicted, but mine is completely collateral, right? So, I'm going to claim compensation from you." I was speechless. How could he even think like that? I wanted to see inside Phil's head. Plus, Erica is a nurse. She's nothing like the unemployed Wendy. She works and doesn't hesitate to spend money. She's the best woman, Phil said, hugging Erica. Seeing them, I felt no jealousy, only revulsion. Then Phil said something utterly ridiculous. "Also, I'll take Zoe. There's some kind of allowance for having a child, right? Wendy, you're cunning, keeping such a good deal to yourself. Children are surprisingly useful. You always left Zoe at your parents', right? Such a terrible mother. I'll definitely get custody since you're in a wheelchair now. If I weren't in a wheelchair, I might have lashed out at Phil for saying such absurd things. My fists clenched on my lap, trembling. Zoe, sensing something, clung tightly to me. A useless wife who doesn't do childcare deserves a divorce. And pay me $50,000 in compensation. Phil and Erica laughed together. I trembled with a rage I had never felt before. What does he think children are? I would never hand Zoe over to such a man. Let him keep running from reality, living the easy life. The world won't bend to his will. I'm sorry to burst his bubble, but he's going to hell, not heaven. I will never forgive him. Ignoring the foolish couple laughing loudly, I took a piece of paper from the chest on my work desk and handed it to Phil. Fine. Here, a divorce form. Phil looked confused for a moment but then laughed again. You're quick, Wendy. Don't forget about the $50,000. All he ever talks about is money. I sighed the deepest sigh of my life internally. All right, $50,000. Just to be clear, this is for the accident that was my fault, and it's compensation for that, right? Phil, pleased at the prospect of getting money, nodded vigorously. Exactly. It's your fault I was in an accident. Despite my astonishment, I kept the conversation calm. Then, I'll send the official documents later. Make sure to sign them along with the divorce papers. And I'll be taking care of Zoe. I won't hand over her custody to you. That's non-negotiable. I said this, looking earnestly into Phil's eyes. Overwhelmed by my firmness, Phil replied, Okay, I give up on Zoe. When I think about it, she doesn't really like me and isn't cute. I didn't tell you, but Erica is pregnant. So, we don't need Zoe. I'll get another $5,000 from my dad. I wondered if he ever considered how Zoe felt being called not cute by her father. I didn't want Zoe to hear any more of Phil's hurtful words, so I urged her to go to the back room. Phil, are you really okay with this? I asked Phil for final confirmation. Huh? Of course, I am. Wendy, you should leave this house as soon as possible. And don't forget to transfer the $50,000 soon. Phil and Erica said this and went back to their room upstairs. I called for Zoe. She came running to me and hugged me tightly. Mommy, will Zoe and Mommy always be together? Zoe looked worried. I hugged her tightly to reassure her. It's okay, we'll always be together. I decided to stay with my parents for a while. I moved my work desk and all other furniture from the first floor to another place. Soon after, I received the signed agreement for the compensation and the divorce papers from Phil at my parents' house. He really is a naive man. His straightforwardness was what attracted me to him initially. But now there's no love left in my heart for him. I can ruthlessly let him fall into hell. It was about a month after I left the house. I noticed the vibration of my smartphone while taking a break from my new manuscript. I had been so absorbed in my writing that I hadn't noticed. But there were dozens of missed calls from Phil on my phone. I was expecting him to contact me soon. I didn't want to talk to Phil, but I had no choice but to answer. Yes? What's up? I could hear Phil's unusually panicked voice on the other end. Hey, Wendy. What the hell is going on? Some guys are here trying to take all the furniture and saying they're going to demolish the house. I couldn't help but burst into laughter, finding Phil's frantic voice amusing. Hey. Wendy, don't laugh. Get over here right now. This isn't going to end well for you. Phil hung up the phone abruptly. He cut off the call himself. even though there was no guarantee I would answer again or agree to go there. He's such a foolish man, not thinking ahead. However, I needed to show him hell, so I decided to go to Phil. Zoe is currently attending nursery school. While I was considering how to get there, the intercom at the entrance rang. It was Janet Bradley. "Ms. Morgan, are you going somewhere?" I explained the situation and that I was going to see Phil. Then Janet said, "In that case, Ms. Morgan, let me accompany you. I'm sure I can be of help." She helped me into the car and drove me to Phil's place. During the drive, Janet revealed a shocking truth to me. I was convinced of many things and, in a way, eager to see Phil. When we arrived at the house, movers were busy taking out the furniture. As soon as Phil saw me, he rushed over. "Hey. What's happening? Is this your doing? Do something about this." Phil was full of bluster until he saw Janet getting out of the car, then his face went pale. "Long time no see, Phil." Janet revealed that she was Phil's real sister. I was surprised when I heard this in the car. "They were almost estranged," she said. "We shouldn't talk standing outside. Let's go inside." After saying this, we moved to the room on the first floor. Phil was speechless and pale. The woman with him, Erica, looked puzzled too. In the empty room, I knew we had to talk, so I started the conversation. "This house is going to be demolished. I don't need it anymore. All the stuff is being moved to my new house. I'm going to live there with Zoe and my parents." As I said this, Phil suddenly got angry and started talking. "Why would you do that? Erica and I are living here now. You can't just demolish it." Erica was nodding in agreement. "This is my house. I built it with my own money." Phil seemed unable to accept my words. "How can a perpetual unemployed like you afford a house? Stop lying." It was Janet who countered Phil's words. "Phil, you really don't know anything. Wendy has been modest, but she's a successful author. She has written many books, some of which have been adapted into dramas and movies. Someone like you really isn't worthy of her. Though as successful might be an exaggeration, it's true that several of my works have been adapted. But you didn't write anything while we were married, right? So you're still unemployed." Phil's point was, as usual, off the mark. Janet continued, her voice tinged with exasperation. "Did you even listen? Wendy has written several works in the past. The more they sell, the more money she makes. That's royalties." Phil seemed not to understand. "Phil, income isn't just about salary. I may not have a salary, but I earn about $300,000 a year in royalties." Phil's eyes widened. Even after finding a younger, cuter nurse like Erica and deciding I was no longer needed, the sound of a $300,000 annual income caught his attention. "Then, that means I can get half of that in the divorce settlement, right?" "Yes. That's $150,000 a year." I was speechless at his simplicity. "Phil, Wendy's royalties are from works published before she met you. So you won't get a penny from that." Phil froze with a baffled look. I wish he could cherish the brief moment he fantasized about having $150,000. I delivered the final blow. "And this house is the same. I built it before I got married. So it's not part of any settlement. The same goes for the furniture. You just moved into my house. Since we're divorced and you're a stranger now, please leave soon. You can only take what you bought yourself." Phil still looked unsatisfied. He came at me with a fierce expression, demanding, "Then where are we supposed to live?" "I don't know. You have $50,000, so you should find a place easily, right?" Phil's expression darkened. "The $50,000 is gone. I went on an overseas trip right away, lost it all gambling. Typical Phil, squandering a fortune on gambling. But I felt not an ounce of sympathy. But your new wife is a nurse, right? Good for you, having a wife with a steady income. I smiled sweetly. Phil also managed a smile. Yeah, Erica being a nurse has really helped. I quit my job, and Erica has taken a month's leave, right? Erica's face fell at his words. That girl isn't a nurse or anything. Janet said this. When I heard Phil got married again, Dad asked me to look into Erica's background. Erica, you really are something, aren't you? Does Phil know everything? Erica shook her head slightly. Erica, you're a nurse, right? You said you earn $4,000 a month, didn't you? Wait, is that not true? Phil, naive and ignorant, had been deceived by Erica. It's a bit pitiful, but this is what he brought upon himself. It's true that she was aiming to be a nurse. But didn't you injure a patient by losing your temper during your training? The family didn't press charges out of kindness. But you ran away without paying any settlement, right? That's the lowest. Erica glared at Janet fiercely. And recently, you've been frequenting a nightclub? I heard that your outstanding debts exceed several $10,000. You're running away from that too. Phil went pale hearing this. What? Nightclub? Debt. Erica, you don't have money? Didn't you borrow money from a loan shark recently? You said it was just because you were short on cash. I became your guarantor thinking you were a nurse. Erica, defiantly, said, what about it? Phil, you acted like you had money. If I knew you didn't have any, I wouldn't have married you. Both were equally to blame in this mess, bickering back and forth. Excuse me for interrupting your argument. I cut in between the quarreling couple. Since there was infidelity during the marriage, I'll be claiming compensation from both of you, thank you. My words brought their argument to an abrupt halt. And, please return the $50,000 I paid. The police reviewed the dashcam footage and confirmed that the accident was due to Phil's negligence. I paid because you said it was my fault, but since it wasn't, please return it. Phil's face twisted more and more. He looked like he was about to cry, despite being a grown man. And don't even think about running away. I'll relentlessly pursue you, but besides that, Janet has already informed the patient's family, the nightclub, and the loan sharks about your whereabouts. They were all relieved to hear you've been found. Lucky for you. Phil looked anything but lucky, and Erica finally broke down crying. The only sound in the now empty house was Erica's wailing. You know, Phil, Erica is your 7th wife. I almost dropped my teacup when Janet casually mentioned this while reviewing a manuscript. The $5,000 Dad gave each time Phil got someone pregnant was meant as an apology to the women. Phil misunderstood it as a reward for having kids. I couldn't believe how someone could misunderstand something so gravely. Janet had cut ties with Phil because of his irresponsibility. Sending Phil abroad was Dad's idea. He didn't make any trouble under surveillance there. It's surprising that he met you, Ms. Morgan, upon returning to the US. Apparently, Phil has 6 kids, including Zoe. After each divorce, his family had to clean up his mess. But they were fed up after the Erica situation. And Erica wasn't even pregnant. It was a lie for the $5,000. Her SNS posts showed her drinking, smoking, and even bungee jumping overseas. Actually, my dad, my husband, and I are big fans of yours, Ms. Morgan. We were so happy to hear Phil married you, but also very worried when we heard you had an accident because of Phil. I regret not introducing myself as his sister right away. I didn't want you to dislike me. I wanted to make up for Phil's actions and hoped being with you would change him. But in the end, I only caused you trouble. I'm so sorry. I hugged Janet tightly. Phil had such a wonderful family, yet he failed to appreciate it. Mommy. Your walking is good. After a long rehabilitation period, I was able to walk slowly on my own. Janet still helps me with my writing and daily life. Phil is now working hard to pay off his debts, living under his father's supervision with Erica. I'm living in a new two-family house, writing novels, and spending time with Zoe and my parents. Mommy, you're great. I love you. Zoe kissed my cheek, and I hugged her tightly. I have my beloved work and my dear Zoe. This is my heaven. I couldn't wish for more happiness than I have now.